Hello, everyone. Welcome back. We are back, the Eye of the Storm podcast. So, today we're actually going to be discussing or debating something different today. Danny G, please let the people know what we're going to be talking about.
So we're recording this at the end of June, so we're exactly halfway through the year. So we thought it would be fun to compare our best and worst of the year so far, just see what the first half of 2025 has been like for movies for us. And then in 6 months, we'll do the same for the entire year and then see how our impressions have changed and what has made our top three once we look back on the entire year. So before we go into the top three, what are your biggest disappointments of the year so far?
For me, unfortunately, it has to be Mickey 17. And it's a movie I actually liked when I first watched it in the cinema. But the reason why it's my biggest disappointment is because the more that I've thought about it after leaving the cinema, and it just got worse as time passed. I went into this year as, this being one of the movies I was most looking forward to. And I think that's mainly because of Robert Pattinson in this. And I've just liked him in so many things recently, whether it's been, obviously the Batman movie or anything he's done in and around that. I think it's like Tenet and stuff like that. So I kind of saw Robert Pattinson and was like, this looks like it's going to be a lot of fun. It's, about a guy that's sort of dying continuously in more and more expensive ways. And, thinking back at it, I don't think they utilize that gimmick well enough in the movie. I don't think that the way that he dies and the sort of using it as a plot device was really that handled that well. Obviously, you had the whole kind of social commentary gimmick that was going on in there as well, which I don't think was handled the best. Again, the more you come away from it, the worse it looks in the movie. It was funny in spots, but overall, it just didn't reach the heights that I wanted it to reach, for me anyways. So for that reason, I would have it as my biggest disappointment. Not to say it's a terrible movie, but just one that I expected a lot more from and didn't get.
So my approach to Mickey 17 was you can't be disappointed if you don't expect anything. And I didn't actually watch it, but every review and every opinion I've seen kind of confirmed my reasons for not watching it. And so I still feel vindicated in that. But yeah, it sucks when you are really looking forward to something and then it just does not deliver.
Yeah. And why was it something that you wasn't super interested in to start off with?
So basically the things I heard is like how shallow the political satire is and how over the top Mark Ruffalo is in it. And I've just no patience for that anymore. If you're gonna do something like that, you gotta be interesting, you gotta be thoughtful, you gotta be insightful, and everything about it just looked like very phoned in, very by the numbers satire. And I've seen that a few dozen times too many.
And those are all reasonable takes from the movie as well, in terms of the satire, the political commentary, and again the over the topness and the likeness to a certain Donald Trump that we have as U.S. president. Not we, because I'm from the UK, but yeah, those were all valid concerns, and unfortunately, the movie had one too much of that.
So, Jonathan, what's your biggest disappointment?
It was between Karate Kid Until Dawn and In the Lost Lands, and I'm going to have to pick In the Lost Lands. That film, I wasn't really expecting much, to be fair, when I saw the trailer, because the cinematic style wasn't really for me. It just had a very grey, is it monochrome type of look? I think it's monochrome.
I'd say so, yeah.
Yeah. And it just didn't really look appealing. However, the dystopian setting is my kind of film. So I was feeling 50-50 about the film. And then after watching the movie, it was just, as Daniel loves to say, dumpster fire. It was, I'm saying, it was just bad, man. Yeah, I just, it's not that I couldn't believe what I was seeing, but I was expecting more from the film. And the film just felt it just felt like they put no effort into this project. If it didn't feel like it was a project made out of passion, because a lot of the times when filmmakers make films is because they want to make a movie. Do you know what I'm saying? This film felt like it was either ChatGPT or just a film that was just pitched and let's see how much money we can make out of it.
And the answer is not very much.
Exactly. And what's her name? The main actress, I forgot her name, but she was in Resident Evil. Obviously, Resident Evil is one of my favorite zombie apocalypse films of all time. I think definitely is one of my favorites. So she's not, of course she's not my favorite actress. However, she's an actress that I like watching because of Resident Evil. So a lot of the times when I see the stuff that she's in, and I like that she kind of has her own niche, and a lot of stuff that she's in is a lot of like dystopian apocalypse type of films. I don't even want to call it okay because I didn't enjoy my experience, and I think I was the only person in the cinema that watched. Yeah, I remember I was the only person in the cinema at the time that I was watching it. I said, "Oh my god!" And I couldn't even leave because that's a movie that we were reviewing. But if that was any other film, if that was a film that I wasn't reviewing, I would have left. So yeah, I was disappointed.
Yeah, not a great one. My pick for biggest disappointment is Andor season 2. Now, I really liked season 1, and I think if you make a list of things that are great about Andor season 1, very little of it carries over into season 2. And I wish I had seen the same show that so many other people have seen about basically what it's about and about the quality of the character arcs and all of that. And I just could not get into it. And I think when you actually kick the wheels a little bit, there's not much there. For to come from the high of season 1, then have to wait for 2 years and then to be so underwhelmed by something and not much else being in the pipeline that kind of goes into that same vein. It was just a massive disappointment. I actually felt bad about movies for a while after I watched it. Or about TV or about fiction in general, because it just left such a big hole for me and I just could not get into it. I could not latch on to anything in it that was really all that great. It's not, that doesn't mean it's all terrible or it's the worst thing ever, but it's just compared to what it could and should have been and what precedent was set by the first season, I just fell off a cliff with season 2. While I've seen worse things this year in terms of expectation and actual result, like this is the biggest disappointment for me so far.
Damn, I wouldn't have thought it would have been Andor.
I mean, I if I knew we were doing series in this as well, I probably would have guessed it just because of how high Daniel was on Andor season 1. But we have to kind of, I just, you're valid in your feelings and you're valid in it not matching up to season 1 for you. But I don't know, for me, it was great. For me, I enjoyed it so much, especially everything that happened in and around Gorm. And I don't know whether it's because I'm not, deep rooted into some Star Wars lore, but I enjoyed, the maybe not Andor's character development in this, but I enjoyed everything that was going on around, Gorm's planet, how the different factions were using Gorm to their own benefits, and then you had like some great individual stories in there with I forget his name, but the art collector and his assistant, which turned out to be his like pseudo daughter, and the whole backstory that they gave them as well. I thought it really heated up from episodes 7/8 onwards for me, anyways.
On paper, I like a whole bunch of the pieces. It just does not come together for me, and it kind of almost retroactively soured me on season 1. Not quite, but it kind of made me feel bad about the whole thing. Anyway, that's my pick so far, and there's still 6 months to go in the year, so there's still room for more disappointment. So moving on to our top 3, Hervé, what's your third place?
My third place would go to Mission Impossible Final Reckoning. And this list was done before I knew we were including TV series. For what it wanted to set out to do, and that's create a spectacle that you can sort of see in the cinema with, really daring stunts that really immerse you in the world. And again, this is a movie where the main actor isn't going to die. But whilst he's doing all of these crazy stunts, you're really there with him, especially the underwater submarine set piece that they did. Like, I don't think I've ever felt more claustrophobic in a cinema than watching that. Even when he was just like going down, I was just like, I just like immediately felt, I'm very claustrophobic as a person. I just like hate tight spaces. And that just literally unleashed all of my sort of deepest fears, that particular set piece. But outside of that, I know the story and character work isn't the greatest in the Mission Impossible movies, but for what it set out to achieve, for me, it did it, and it passed with flying colours for me. So I put that as my number 3. And this is just a note, it probably won't be there at the end of the year because I'm anticipating better movies to come out than this. But for first half, it takes top 3.
Yeah, if we were doing a top 5, then Mission Impossible would probably be on it for me. But its story is too flimsy and its holes are too big for me to really be at the very top. There was better stuff out there. But yeah, if you just wanted a Mission Impossible experience, then I think that one really delivered. Jonathan, what's your number 3?
I'd say it might have to be Wolfman. The kind of like experience that I had witnessing his transformation into a wolf felt very surreal, and it just felt like I was watching a step-by-step process of his transformation. Like usually with just werewolf movies, it doesn't kind of like give you the insight and the kind of like the POV in a sense. Whereas with this one, it kind of felt like they were generally showing you like the slow, gradual transformation of what was happening, which is one of the main things which I really enjoyed about this one. I like the story. Don't get twisted. Of course, there were some issues. However, I really did like the story, and I was a bit skeptical at first because there wasn't really a lot of characters in this film. And however, like I just have, I don't know if it's a pet peeve, but I just kind of have a disinterest for seeing a lot of characters in such a big environment. Because whenever I see few characters, I feel like okay, they should be kind of like set in a smaller area. So that's how I kind of felt. So when I saw there wasn't much from the trailer, I saw there wasn't really much. It doesn't seem like there's gonna be like a lot of characters in this film. So okay, I don't know. I just something just clicked to me. I'm like, I'm not. I don't know how I'm gonna feel about this one. But the story, the werewolf transformation, it was for me, man. I had a good time with this one. I had a really good time. So I'm gonna give this one. That's number 3 on my top 3.
I think the first person experience of turning into a monster is something that movie really gets right. All right, so my third pick is The Surfer, which is just a movie that came out of nowhere. I had no expectation for it. Not the biggest Nicolas Cage fan. He for my taste, he's often a little bit weird for the sake of weird. But here it all comes together. Like the setting, the theme, the acting, the surreal aspect of it, it all clicks for me. And it has certainly helped that I watched it in an empty cinema, and that just made it just a little bit weirder. And this whole watching a person just completely disintegrate until you're not even sure what is real and what isn't, but it all kind of holds together in the end, and it kind of makes sense. You know, the kind of performance that Nicolas Cage tends to give is exactly right for this movie. Like somebody just being unhinged and just losing grip on reality on himself is just exactly what this movie needs, and he delivers. Probably one of the reasons why it's in my top 3 is because I expected nothing from it. I think we just picked it because it was a slow week, and I think none of us were anticipating it or had known about it before. We kind of just picked it because it was kind of the best option that week. And then I walked out of it just engaged. And to me, that's one of the things I want out of a good movie.
Yeah, we had complete different experiences with that one. I remember saying that was probably one of the worst movies I've watched of all time. But again, it's a matter of style, and it's a matter of preference with some of the, especially when like a movie doesn't follow, typical storytelling conventions. It's a matter of preference, and it's a matter of whether you like what the director is trying to go for, what the story trying to go for. I think it hit really well for you. For me, it just rubbed me the wrong way. That's a bit like Marmite. You either love it or you hate it.
Yeah, a lot of this comes down to how do you feel watching it and having watched it in a world where so many movies are franchise movies or very safe, broad appeal products and not very daring. For something to come along that is just so its own thing, without regard for anything else, it's just refreshing. And sometimes that works, and sometimes it doesn't. And in this case, it did for me. All right, moving on to number 2. Herbie, what's your number 2?
My number 2 is Thunderbolts. And this is a movie that I was so convinced wasn't going to be good, especially as we was in a period where Marvel was making, really mediocre movies, or if not, pretty bad movies. When I saw this bunch of sort of B-list characters that were being cobbled together for this superhero movie, the whole time as it was, announced, as it was leading up to it, I was a bit like, why? Like, who wants this? I don't care about these characters. I never really liked any of these characters in any of the movies that they had been in either, apart from Bucky. So I was really like, I'm not really sold on the idea of the Thunderbolts. Then I sat there and I watched it, and I absolutely loved it. I loved the humor in it. I loved sort of the darker, more down-to-earth tone that the stories tried to tell around sort of depression and grief, and feeling a little bit lost in this world, and those type of things. I thought the Void in this was perfect in terms of a villain. Just like his aesthetics, and once he becomes a Void, I thought his aesthetic was brilliant. The way that he was getting rid of people, I know it wasn't permadeath for people, so it kind of knocks it down a little bit as to how menacing he was as a villain. But still, just the animation, and you had that one moment where David Harbour's character, the Red Guardian, has just saved a little girl, and then she just gets voided, and that feeling in the cinema was like, damn. And I know the ending isn't perfect, but overall, I think it delivered a really solid story, really good action, a really compelling villain that I always appreciate. and it was a return to form for Marvel, which I'm a superhero movie fan. I always like when the superhero movie's good, and this one ticked all the right boxes for me.
I'm one of the people who were mostly checked out of Phase 4 and didn't touch any of the Disney Plus shows. So this movie had a really uphill battle for me. I barely knew any of the characters, and I was not invested in any of them. And I think a lot of the complaints I had in our review of it is probably addressed by watching all of that stuff. I'm just not interested in doing that. So the movie kind of already had two hands tied behind its back, and it still delivered for me. It was still a good time, and it's surprisingly not safe for the MCU. We don't expect an MCU movie to actually do something interesting in that sense. It might be good, but it's probably not taking any risks. And I thought this movie, by choosing its villain and these characters, I think stepped out of the expected mold just a little bit, and I think that was really to its benefit. All right, Jonathan, what's your number 2?
I was actually struggling because Thunderbolts was gonna be number 2, but then it ended up being number 3, and then now it ended up being number 4 because I ended up remembering these. Obviously Wolfman, and obviously now my number 2, which is Companion, the A24 film. Yeah, I remember it's quite far back that I watched this. It felt like I watched this last year, but it actually came out this year. But yeah, this movie, I wasn't too surprised that I liked the film because, like I said, it was an A24 film, and a lot of they have created some garbage movies. However, a lot of the films I really, really do like. I just like their style when it comes to their film, and especially with this one, it was just a fun film. There was thrilling moments. It was just a fun movie. It wasn't a horror. I definitely wouldn't say it was a horror. However, it was gory enough for it to be an exciting, thrilling experience. And yeah, I'd say the performances as well was definitely great. I think overall this was just a very fun movie that I had a very good time watching.
So my number 2 is Sinners. So to say that Sinners was not made with me in mind is an understatement. Like there's just so many hurdles to get through, from the accents to the time period to the subject matter, just everything. It's not like I expected nothing from it. It's more like I had no specific expectations. And as I was watching it, I said, yeah, this is a movie. This is like we're so used to kind of broken, made by committee nonsense. And this is just somebody's movie. Like, it just fires on all cylinders and it does exactly what it wants to do. It's got some great performances in it. It's got some memorable scenes in it. And it just does everything you want to do from a movie. And it was also interesting to see that a movie that's so inaccessible was so successful, and how people just really latched onto it. That was just a really interesting experience. So that's my number 2. Hervé, what's your number 1 pick? Or did you want to say something about this?
No, I was my number 1 is Sinners. So I was just kind of waiting to say something about Sinners. I was waiting to say it's my number 1 pick as well. But I kind of echo everything that you said about the movie with the acting and the characters in this. It's not like they have loads of lines, especially someone like Cornbread or Delroy Lindo's character in this. It's not like they have like extensive amounts of lines in this, but every time that they have something to give to the movie, it hits and it makes you understand the character a little bit more. It just kind of like warms you up to all of the characters. And I think the biggest critique I had of the movie is it kind of speed runs the vampire stuff at the end. And I feel like we could have spent a little bit more time on the horror element of it. But again, everything around this, the movie, the characters, how well it gets you invested in, everyone's story in this, to again the music in this, and how they piece it into the story, how they do that one scene when they show the past and the future and stuff. I think it's just all really well done, and it was one of the movies that I was looking forward to the most this year, and I'm very happy that it delivered and found success in it as well.
Well,
Jonathan, your number 1 pick.
Sinners as well. For me, Sinners is the best vampire movie that I've ever seen. And I know a lot of you keyboard warriors getting ready to say, oh, Sinners was just a rip-off version of Dusk Till Dawn. You're just saying that because you're black, etc., etc. Look, man, the reality of the situation is this. Even though, yes, you could see the influences from Dusk Till Dawn, but come on, bro. Like, how many movies get influences from other movies? As long as you can see the influences, but what do you do with that idea? As in, like, I'm not going to call it a repurposed idea, but you can, like I said, you can see that there is influences, but what are you going to do with that idea? How are you going to make it different, and how are you going to make it bigger? That's exactly what they did with just like the themes, the mixture of genres, and of course the performance. Yeah, but just I think just like the blend of genres and the themes, those were the two, how they kind of like blended the two. And I think that was definitely shown in the famous, what's that music scene where they had like, oh, I forgot his name, but he was singing. He had the guitar, singing, and then you had just like over time you saw different, like how the black culture evolved when it comes to music. But that scene in particular, I think that scene there was like, okay, that kind of like separates this movie from other vampire movies. Yeah. So for me, I think overall, I had a very Sinners. I wasn't even, and it wasn't even a film that I was anticipating, as in like it wasn't a film that I was proper looking forward to go and watch. Because when I saw the trailer, I was like, okay, this looks cool. It looks interesting, but I didn't think it was gonna be my number one of like for this year so far. So I was very, very surprised. Glad I watched
Also,
it.
it had
IMAX.
yeah, I was gonna say, and this is just like a stupid thing, but just the way that Remick says Sammy in this, it's just great. I don't know why. Like I've heard it so many times, like on social media when they clip it. I'm just like, I don't. It just sounds great.
And the Road to Dublin song, I've actually been listening to that a lot recently as well. And obviously Sammy track, as I've been listening to those two, but those are the two songs I've been listening to a lot on YouTube. So yeah, it definitely has memorable moments.
Yeah, and also the From Dusk Till Dawn thing, like it's definitely inspired by that. Like structure-wise, and just in terms of major plot beats, there is a lot of overlap, right? And I don't think you can argue that it wasn't a major inspiration, but that doesn't mean it's not its own thing and it doesn't use those things for its own purposes, right? If there's one thing you cannot accuse Sinners of being, is being derivative or safe or unimaginative or phoned in. It's the exact opposite of all of that, right? And I don't care how closely it leans into some of its influences. All right, my pick for best movie of the year so far is September 5. September 5, like if Sinners was a movie that was not made for me, then September 5 is a movie that was made 100% for me. It does everything I want. It's a historical drama that goes out of its way to be historically accurate and use that not as a crutch or as an obstacle, but actually as a skeleton and foundation for its story. Its characters and how they're woven into the plot and how it uses suspense and tension and the chaos of a live news broadcast is, especially in its historical context, it just all works. And the way the different characters are representations of different slices of history, basically, that are thrown into a room and have to work together and have to deal with each other is just masterful. Like, if anybody ever wants to do a movie that vaguely does a similar thing, just study September 5 and see how it's done. It's wonderful. It's a borderline perfect movie on that front. Also doesn't hurt that it covers like an area of German history. Like, it's actually not about really the kidnapping. It's really about German history and the German post-war era, which is not often dealt with by non-German movies. And just having that perspective in there was just interesting. Not because I'm like clamoring for representation or anything like that, but just having that dealt with as a topic was kind of interesting, while actually having a lot to say in the process. So for that reason, it's the best movie of the year so far, and I would be very surprised if it didn't end up in the top 3 by the end of the year.
I forgot about that film completely, but no, I did enjoy the movie. And again, you kind of talked on a specific period of time in history. And again, what I liked were there's just a subtleness of, how the different characters interacted based on the backgrounds that they were from. So you had like, the German people, the French people, and I can't remember exactly where else like some of the people were, but just like the dynamics that caused in the workspace that they were working in was super interesting in that movie as well, amongst sort of everything else that was going on as well. But that was like one thing that stuck with me from that movie.
And I was just, again, not expecting very much. A lot of the movies we watch, I don't really do any research. I've kind of learned to not look forward to things, just in general, but especially when it comes to movies. And for a movie to just blow me out of the water like this, it just feels good. It's like this is why mediums are my favorite medium, because I don't really get that experience or that feeling from any other type of fiction.
Yeah, I completely forgot about that film.
I think many people have. Like, I don't think I've seen it referenced anywhere. Like, to call it like a hidden gem is kind of too much. Like, I think it was decently successful, but it did not make a big splash. And I like, for something that I consider a borderline perfect movie, at least within its niche and its style, that's a little bit surprising, maybe. Any other takeaways about 2025 in film? We've been doing this since early 2024, right? So most of our reviews were done in 2024, and 2025 was the first time where we really went into a new year, having done this for a little bit. Did you guys have any kind of observations or anything like that? Because I've got one.
Shoot, and then we can go from there.
So for me, the biggest takeaway was how many good small movies there are this year and how few train wrecks there are. Like by this time last year, we had 2 Rebel Moon movies. We had like Borderlands was around the corner. I think The Crow was in July. We had just a whole like The Strangers was one of the big first big train wrecks we talked about. 2024 I just had some really, really big stinkers. And while 2025 has not had many breakout successes yet, unless you are Ninja 2, which is the Chinese animation that made $2.5 billion or something like that. But outside of that, there's been not many like runaway smash successes, but there have also not been many garbage fires, right? There's not been a Rebel Moon, there has not been a Strangers, there has not been a Borderlands quite yet. The year is still young, but this combination of not many train wrecks and a whole bunch of small movies that just come out of nowhere and are just good is like something that I've really observed this year. And a lot of this is just what I happen to watch. But it's nice. It feels like film is in a better position than it was a year ago.
A lot of the times I think they were just kind of like sucked into this idea that our generation and the younger lot just enjoy seeing nice, aesthetically pleasing, flashy things, but in reality it's like, no, it's proved we've proved, I'm saying the box office has proved that that's not the only things that we want good stories as well, do you know what I'm saying? So thankfully, hopefully it seems like they are drifting too, because even with Marvel, I think they said, which I don't think they should go that route, but they did say they're going to focus on spending less money on their films. And I said, I understand why you'll do that, but at the same time, that wasn't the issue. The issue was the story itself. So, but hopefully, if they do that, hopefully that will result in them actually concentrating and making a good movie. You know what I'm saying? Just a good story, a good movie with a good story.
Yeah, and it's not like Hollywood is suddenly run by great artists or something. Like a year ago, it wasn't. But for some reason, they've produced overall, I think, better stuff than they did by this time last year.
I think for me, anyways, it's trust your creatives a little bit more. One of the biggest success this year, it didn't make the hundreds. Well, it didn't make $1 billion, but with Sinners, it was Ryan Coogler's vision. It was his story, his idea. He developed it, and it was a massive success. Even down to things like the Marvel movies, it's quite notable that since they've shifted away from the sort of mandate to produce as much as possible, as fast as possible, they refocused on actually making good quality movies. It's no wonder why there's a big contrast between Captain America, Brave New World, and the Thunderbolts, because one came at the end of the mandate of pushing out as much movies as possible, and the other came under the regime change when they were again focused on the creatives and focused on making good movies. So whilst again you can't give free rein to absolutely everyone, and you can't let people just run wild with making whatever they want, because not everything's going to be great, and some things need to be checked. But there just needs to come back to a balance where it's not all about trying to follow a specific formula that the corporates were going with in the past, not trying to sort of follow this nostalgia bait, trying to hook everyone in with nostalgia and remember berries and stuff like that, but actually focus on a creative vision and the story that they're trying to tell. That's kind of one of my takeaways.
Yeah.
Okay, so guys, thank you very much for tuning in.
If you reached this part of the episode, thank you very much for working with us. We appreciate your support as always. If you liked everything that you heard in today's episode, you should probably tell a friend. And if you hated everything and you didn't enjoy a discussion, tell an enemy. We are the Eye of the Storm podcast.
All right, guys. Thank you very much for tuning in today's discussion, and we will catch you next week. Au revoir.
Ciao.
Bye-bye.